And good morning and welcome to the Captain's Log. Today is the 7th of September. It's 2:45 in the morning. I'm at my second stop of the night, and this stop doesn't open until 4, so I get to take a little nap after I finish recording this short little video. Um, Quick update. I had mentioned on the last episode that I was thinking I was having a turbo issue when I was losing power climbing these little grades, and turns out I was in the right church but in the wrong pew. And on my way home that morning, a check engine light popped up. I took it into the shop, and they checked the turbo and checked the coat, and it turns out it was the high pressure hose coming off of the turbo going into the intake. So that was a $450 repair for a little hole and a hose, and these really substantial clamps that have these giant springs on them. And so I was partially right, and I got that fixed, not an issue. And then I finally got all 8 of my drive tires replaced. And it took a little while. I kept trying to get into the tire shop to get it done, but I kept getting stuck on these out of town routes, and I didn't have enough legal hours of service to get back and actually get the work done. And finally, this early yesterday morning, I got back to our warehouse, and it was only 7 in the morning. I still had about 3 hours worth of duty and drive time available. So I told dispatch, I said, I'm going to go over and get those tires done. Hopefully it won't be too busy on a Sunday morning. And I was right. It wasn't too busy, or excuse me, Sunday morning, Saturday morning. Saturday morning. Sorry, my working nights keeps my days all goofed up. So yesterday morning, the 6th. So that was all done and done. Today is the 7th, and on today's episode, I want to talk about pre-trip inspections. I'm not going to go through point by point of what's involved with a pre-trip. I'm more going to talk about what the goal of doing a pre-trip inspection is and why it's important, and kind of highlight some of the major systems and components that need to be checked. So let's just start off with the reason to do a pre-trip. It's required by DOT regulations, but aside from that, it's your opportunity to inspect your vehicle to ensure that it's safe. That's the whole goal of being out there on the road, is to do it and do it safely. And when you do your pre-trip, you can catch a lot of safety items and get them fixed before you get on the road, and then wind up, getting pulled over for a tail light or whatever, an issue, getting a ticket or having an accident or whatever. So the whole goal of doing the pre-trip is to catch those items that really affect safety. And we're going to talk in general terms. Every company has a set policy and procedure of what you check. I'm just going to generically go over how I do my pre-trip. And I do basically 3 types of pre-trips. I do my major monthly pre-trip, where I check everything in detail. I go through the whole. I don't own the trailers. The trailers are assigned to me to use, so I don't really go through the trailers. So we have a mechanic shop that does that. But my truck, I go through my truck once a month with a high attention to detail, and the whole idea is to be as thorough and as detailed as possible. My company that I lease onto also requires a monthly safety inspection, and I do mine in addition to what they do. And I do a weekly inspection, which is um, not as in depth as the monthly inspection, but I still check a lot of the same components, and then daily pre-trip. So let's quickly go through my daily routine. And the pre-trip really starts when you walk. If you're not sleeping in your vehicle, if your vehicle's parked and you're walking to your vehicle, you're looking at the general overall look. You're looking to see if there's any puddles underneath the hood, tires, any major things that stand out. Now, trucks are symmetrical for the most part. They have the same thing on one side as they have on the other. And one thing you have to keep in mind is if something looks off on one side, look at the other side, the same component, and you can usually tell if it is a problem or if it's just your the way you're looking at something. So if you walk up to your vehicle and you see a big puddle of reddish water looking liquid, that's a pretty good indication that you have a coolant leak. I mean, some trucks take green coolant, but most of the ones out on the road today take an orangey reddish coolant. And so you can see that from a distance, especially when you're parked in the sunlight. Also, you're looking for puddles of oil. Oil stands out, especially if you're on light pavement or concrete. It's easy to spot an oil leak. And if your vehicle's leaning to one side or the other, it's a pretty good indication that you probably have some tires that are low. So that's the walk-up inspection. As you're walking up to the vehicle, you're just looking at the general look of the vehicle. And this is what I do every day before I start my day, is I turn on all of the lights, the headlights, the high beams, the turn signals, four-ways. Some trucks have a built-in function that you press a button and it runs through a diagnostic, so you can get out of the vehicle and actually walk around and look at the lights yourself. Or it's hard to check brake lights because you can't stand behind the vehicle and check the brakes at the same time. At night, it's one thing where you can step on the brakes and you can see the light up behind you. But generally, it's kind of hard to check the function of the brake lights. So that's check every single light. If your truck has it installed, then it's required to be working. Now you see these trucks that are going down the road that just have lights going down each side, up and down, hundreds of lights. And if there's lights out, you can get a ticket for every single light that's not working. See, my vehicle just has the basic requirements. I have 5 going across the top of my cab. I've got my regular running lights, headlights, turn signals, tail lights, reverse lights. I also have cargo lights that are on the back of the cab, so you can see when you're hooking up your equipment and checking your airlines and whatnot, that those are all working. It's very important to have lights, especially at night, because you want to alert other drivers if you're stepping on the brakes, you're going to change lanes or whatever. I open up the hood and I look. I don't do a thorough check. I just kind of look to see if there's anything that stands out. I look at all the tires. I don't generally check the tire pressure each time I do a daily inspection. I do the thump check I have a rubber mallet where I smack each tire and I listen for the sound. And if it doesn't sound right, then I go get my tire pressure gauge and I check the tire pressure. And then when I check the tire pressure, if I note that it's low, then I'll go put air in it. So that's what I do. That's my daily inspection. Also, when I'm hooking up the trailers, you have your air lines and there's rubber seals inside the glad hands. I check to make sure that those are good, because you don't want to be leaking air, and lose your air pressure, and then you lose your air pressure, like we talked before, you lose your brakes, and it's not a very pleasant deal. So that's my daily inspection. Exterior. Interior, I check to make sure my dash lights are working. I check to make sure my dome light. I have a dome light above my uh, steering area. Also, I have one that's directly in the center here, and then I have lights in the sleeper bunk. And uh, I don't need to make sure my lights are working. And then if they're not working, when it's not a critical item, so when I get a chance, I'll replace the light bulbs. Uh, I also check to make sure I don't hear any air leaking when I press my um, trailer supply valve or my park and brake valve. When you press the button and you hear a little bit, and it should stop within a couple of seconds. But if you hear an air leak coming out, then you know you've got a bigger issue. So that's basically my interior inspection. You're required to have certain documents, like for me, because I'm an owner operator, I'm required to have my lease contract, which is totally separate from company drivers. They obviously don't have a lease contract, but you have to have your registration, your proof of insurance, and your tax ID. So those are required documents that I have a binder, and inside my binder I have all that information. And if I don't take my binder out of the truck, I'm pretty sure it's in there. So as long as nobody else is getting in and out of my truck, I'm pretty sure all my required documents are on board. Also, you're required to have your personal documents, your driver's license, your medical card, and if you're going into Canada or Mexico, obviously your passport or your passport card. I don't go into Canada, so I don't carry my passport with me. It's in the safety deposit box, and the only time I pull it out is when I get on an airplane, commercial airliner, not when I'm flying my own airplane. So that's the daily inspection. Weekly inspection is a lot more thorough. I mean, I'm still checking all the same things I'm checking for my daily, but I'm checking my fluids, my coolant, my power steering fluid, my engine oil. Right now, my truck burns about a gallon every 2 to 3 weeks. So generally, I don't have to add oil, but I always carry 2 gallons of oil and 2 gallons of antifreeze in my toolbox. That if I ever need to add oil, I've got that with me. I also check my my fan belts. Those are important because if you lose your fan belts, you lose your AC, you lose your fan, you lose your alternator, all those things that are driven by the belts. So I check my belts, make sure that they only have just a little bit of slack, make sure they're not worn and frayed, cracking, those kind of things. I check my engine block to see if there's any signs of leaks. I check underneath. There's valves for the front brakes. I check to hear if there's any air leaking. I check my slack adjusters. Well, let me rephrase that. That's a monthly thing. I basically look at the overall condition underneath the hood. Also, I check my windshield wipers, my windshield wiper fluid, those kind of things. Especially when you're driving a truck in the late afternoon or early morning, you get a lot of bugs. So I always want to make sure I have a pretty full wiper fluid tank. That way, in case I get bugs on the windshield, I can somewhat get them cleaned off before I have to go in and actually do the whole scrubbing with the squeegee and the scrub brush and whatnot, because you want to keep your windshield glass as clean as possible, because it's you have to be able to see, obviously. I check all my mirrors. I check all of my tire lug nuts, make sure there's no lug nuts backing off, technically you're supposed to do a finger check and reach down and turn them and make sure it's tight, but I just kind of eyeball it. Because you can usually see it if one's backing off, because it'll be a little bit away from the rim. I also check my oil seals, my hub oil seals, because I don't want to have a oil leak coming out of my hubs, because you could lock up your wheel bearings and whatnot without any oil in there. Some trucks have greased bearings. My truck has oil. Also, I check my fifth wheel and make sure it's in good working order. It has the lever that you pull to release the fifth wheel. I make sure that's in good condition. I make sure the fifth wheel itself is able to move, because it's on a kind of a pivot point where it can pivot. And I make sure that's good. I make sure that I don't have any damage to my airbags. There's for the suspension, under each axle, there's 2 airbags, one on each side. So I check my airbags, make sure they're good. I check all of my exhaust and all that, and my airlines. And that's pretty much the weekly inspection. The monthly inspection is checking everything from the daily, the weekly, and a lot more in depth. Checking all my slack adjusters. That's part of the braking system. When you adjust your slack adjusters, they have to be within a certain parameter to be acceptable. So if I note that I have a slack adjuster that's out of adjustment, then I'll have it fixed, because brakes are important. You got to be able to stop. I can't stress that enough. So check all that. Check my frame rails. Check all of my lugs, all of my wheel tire treads. I have a tire depth gauge where I measure all of my tires and their depth on the treads. The regulations state that you have to have a minimum of 4 32nds of an inch on your steer tires, which is like, what is that, reduced to 2 into 2 is or 2 into 4 is 2, and into 32 is 16. So what's that, an eighth of an inch worth of tread. And then you check them in 3 spots, and then you average them out per each tire. And then the drive tires are required to be at a minimum of 2 32nds, which is equivalent to a 16th of an inch. That's not a whole lot of tread. So if you're getting down into the quarter inch or less, it's time to start paying a lot more attention to your tires. I've had 3 tires blow out, and another one that had a slow leak. And it gets very expensive when you have to have someone come out to do a roadside service. So if you can catch those things ahead of time, it'll save you a lot of hassle in the long run. I also check all of my I look underneath for any leaks. I check my leaf springs for damage. I check my shocks, all of those mechanical components. And the whole idea is it's preventative. If you start to see a shock that's starting to develop a leak, well, you're going to have to replace your shock. So just keep the reasons why you're checking certain things in mind when you're doing it, and it'll make a lot more sense. I know it's tedious, and I don't like crawling on the ground underneath my truck and looking for problems, but I'd rather catch a problem early than have to deal with it, have an emergency to going down the highway. So that's my 2 cents, my opinion, on pre-trips. The DOT in their testing standards has a set of parameters that you have to follow, and the whole idea is to be familiar with your truck, and it doesn't matter how you do it. The whole idea is just to do it, and once you do it a few times, you'll develop a routine. I like to start at the my driver's side door, and then I work my way down the left side of the vehicle or behind, up the right side, and you're checking everything. When you actually go to take your test and you're doing the pre-trip inspection portion, you're going to be uh, actually doing it with an examiner watching you, and you're going to be verbally and physically telling the examiner what you're checking for and what you're checking it for. So the basic idea is it's in good condition. It's not damaged. It's not leaking. It's properly mounted, and you'll develop kind of a, I don't know what you want to call it, kind of a mnemonic uh, as you're going through it. So you're gonna say something like checking the fan belts for wear and tear, cracks, damage, fraying, and their proper tension. So that's that. Then you move to the next item and the next item, and the next item. And it's a little easier when you're actually looking at the component. You can say, oh yeah, I need to check the oil. So you check your oil. I need to check the power steering fluid or whatever. So that's basically my way of doing things. You'll develop your own over time. There's no right or wrong perfect way of doing it. Just as long as you do it and you do everything that you're supposed to check, and you check it um, regularly. I know there's guys out there on the road that just turn the key, put it in gear, and go. And those guys are the ones that wind up uh, you know having major breakdowns or having accidents because they're not paying attention. So do your pre-trip, do it right, and do it right the first time. So that's my 2 cents today. Hopefully you learn something from this. On the next episode, I think we'll go through the on-road driving portion, and I think we'll have all our bases covered as far as the CDL. We've gone through the three main written exams. Now we've gone through the pre-trip, and the next thing we'll go through the on-road driving, and we'll just kind of talk through it and go from there. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good day. I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.